call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order for March 3rd, 2011. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Ron is absent tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Scott.
Here.
Trustee Emery.
Here.
Trustee Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Forsley.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zemanek.
Here.
Economic Development Director and Assistant Manager Kimball.
Here.
Spencer Parker from the Finance Department.
Here.
Public Works Director May. Police Chief Mulhern.
Here.
Fire Chief Traub.
Here.
Director of Fire Prevention Daniels.
Here.
Assistant Economic Development Director and Village Planner Malik. Oh, she's out in the hall. She's here.
Oh, she's here, sorry.
Okay, that should be all. Would everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda, we have the minutes for the Committee of the Whole meeting held February 17th, 2011, and the board meeting held February 22nd, 2011, and the special meetings of February 10th, 2011, and February 16th, 2011. Any comments or corrections?
There, on the final motion for adjournment, it's a typo. For some reason, the computer did not pick up the capitalization for Emery or Scott. So those have been made sure that they are.
That's corrected?
They're not, it was a typo thing. So.
Which Scott was it? Was it Lee Scott or Bob Scott?
Or was
It was Bob Scott.
Or was it
Or
Lee
Bob
Bob?
Fleming, yeah.
Thank you. Open forums?
No open forums.
There's no open forums for tonight, so we'll go to reports. The mayor left no report for me tonight, but I would like to make a couple of comments. First, I'd like to congratulate the Westmont High School musical that was done this last weekend. It was The Wizard of Oz. And the children that were in the play were tremendous. What was interesting about it, they not only used high school students, but they used the junior high and the grade school students as well, which gave them an opportunity to see what big high school productions are all about. So hopefully we'll get some new actors in it for when they get to the high school. And then the second thing I've got is a combined code enforcement and building and zoning meeting, which will be held on March 21st here in this room at 6:30 p.m. And that's all I've got. How about the clerk?
21st?
21st,
6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
And the clerk?
I was going to congratulate the high school too. It was delightful. But secondly, early voting starts Tuesday, March 8th. So anybody that wants to vote early, you can vote at Downers Grove Village Hall. Is probably the closest for the Westmont residents. So, and if you live out in the York Township, then you have to go to York Township. So, all right, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Our village attorney, John Zemanek.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Village manager, Ron Searle.
Just a request for executive session for personnel meeting.
Okay, thank you. Trustee reports, starting with Trustee Emery.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just really briefly wanted to mention, I saw an article in the Progress regarding our plans for a TIF district, and I just wanted to, the TIF district down in the 63rd and Cass Commercial District. I just wanted to say that although, to take nothing away from our Citizens Finance Committee, they did a fine job, but the whole notion of putting a TIF district in this town and where and when started many, many years ago before I was ever on the board. And a lot of the people who are currently on the board discussed it a long time ago and helped and are helping to bring it to fruition. So I just want to give credit where credit's due, and that's to the other members of the board that decided long ago a TIF district would be appropriate for this town. That's all I have. Thank you.
Trustee Forsley.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Trustee Seneca.
Thank you. I just also want to congratulate the high school. The music was incredible. It was great to see all of the young students. It never ceases to amaze me. Every year, those plays get better and better and more professional. And if anybody saw it and saw that witch melt, you knew exactly how they did it, but it was so smooth that you kind of went, oh, it was really well done. So congratulations to them, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Fleming.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Just out of curiosity, just put my own mind at ease. The sign at the new Oxford Insurance Agency up on Ogden and Cass and the Lincoln Mercury sign, are those signs compliant?
I could speak for the Oxford one. I
Okay.
did review that permit, and it did comply with the code in terms of the electronic portion of the sign and the height. I had heard from someone else that there was a concern that it was too tall, but it did meet our height requirement. As far as the Ogden Auto Group sign goes, I did not personally review that, but we can look into it and respond to you.
Yeah, because I think with more and more of these type of signs going up, I think we need to make sure that everything is just so, because that sign looks awfully big. I mean, I go by there quite often back and forth, and I came across there the other night, and I'm looking at this thing, and it's like,
It's bright, too.
yeah, and I mean, it's, you know,
Because we're going to, if I can just, we're going to have to take a look at, we have so many electronic signs going up. Lincoln Mercury's is really big and really bright, and some of them have very lengthy messages, which tend to be a distraction for drivers. So we need to pay careful attention to those signs.
The ones that are colorized and feature animated graphics and things, at this point, I believe that they should all be amortized out. So staff is going to have to pursue code enforcement to get compliance on some of those. Some of the permits that were issued when those first became the technology that was popular a couple of years back, they were installed with the understanding that the village was moving in the direction of limiting the signs to alphanumeric characters only with a solid black background and no flashy transitions.
okay. The other inquiry I have is about a particular parcel, which I know has had stickers stuck on its door now for, I'd say, close to a year. It's a property, I think it's 25 North Lincoln. It has a tendency, it looks like it's an old garage that was built behind the house. It's got poly on the roof. It has got, and it sits right on the alley. Someone was inhabiting that, and that thing has been stickered. I mean, what are we doing with that?
Yeah, you're correct, trustee. That was a garage that was formerly occupied as a dwelling. I think we've had a structural engineer in that last year indicating that the floor trusses and the joists are not capable of supporting any weight in there. It should be unoccupiable and it should be torn down. We'll move towards demolition action in that regard.
Yeah, because, I mean, I thought that's what the whole purpose was when I saw the sticker go on the door for that thing to come down.
There was, apparently there was the property was owned by the previous owner who passed away. It took some time to settle the estate as the person died intestate, and I believe it's either the nephew or the grandson of the decedent who is in the process of or has recently inherited the property.
I mean, I just have some concerns dealing with how our alleys throughout the entire village are lit. But I mean, that being a property like that in that particular area, I mean, we all know how that alley goes, and I mean, it's just one of those things that I would hope that we get that torn down real soon.
We will check on the disposition of the estate and move towards condemnation or demolition action.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Klebanow.
I just have one thing, and that is to remind everybody that a week from Sunday, Sunday the 13th, is daylight saving time to begin. So please spring forward. And while you're doing it, don't forget to change your smoke detector batteries. We'll have spring probably just around the corner, I hope that means.
Let's hope.
Or is that wishful thinking? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
We have one more meeting to announce on Monday night at 6 o'clock.
We're just going to do that.
I forgot.
We will have an admin and finance meeting before our board meeting.
Great minds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, unfinished business. Comprehensive Plan Consultant Selection. Board to consider the selection of a consultant for the purpose of rewriting the Village of Westmont Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, Your Honor. Staff is pleased to present the information that has previously been discussed by the Westmont Village Board. As the board is aware, and for benefit of our viewing audience, staff was instructed several months ago to promulgate an RFP for services of a consultant to assist in the complete rewrite of the Village 1998 Comprehensive Plan. And I believe it was at a February 16th special committee of the whole meeting. The village board heard presentations by the three finalist consulting firms, the firms of Housea Levine, Camiros, and Tesca and Associates. And I believe if staff doesn't wish to assume anything, but judging by the tone of the discussion following those presentations, the board appeared to favor the presentation of Housea Levine for rewrite of the comprehensive plan. I guess it would be, staff would await further direction from the village board, but it would be our hope that the board would, because this is a professional and artistic contract, make the selection of the consultant that you wish to select for the comprehensive plan work, and then instruct the staff to negotiate a specific scope of work contract and price with them. That contract would then be brought back for the consideration of ratification of the village board.
And the last time we talked about it, we were going to do reference checks on this particular firm, which
Yes.
we concluded, and maybe you could comment on the overall.
Yes, I did make calls to the community development directors in the villages of Geneva and Downers Grove and received, I would call, stellar recommendations. A couple of the things that the gentleman that I spoke with mentioned was that in the community of Geneva, when the plan was presented to the community as a whole at an open house, the firm received a standing ovation for the document that was presented. Another thing that we felt was very significant that was pointed out by the community development director in the village of Downers Grove, we're all very concerned that we get a sufficient number of residents to participate in the visioning and the compilation of this important document for our future of our community. And I think the community development director in Downers Grove indicated words to the effect that they felt they had upwards of 1,800 different people who were involved from various factions and various constituencies of the Downers Grove community who in some way participated in the comprehensive planning process. Our assistant director and village planner, Shannon Malik, is a member of the American Planning Association, and we did have her check with the APA to verify some of the awards that were claimed to have been won by this firm. I thought, well, it's real easy to stand up here and say, we won this award, and we won that award, and in fact, they are, I guess, an award-laden company, I guess we would say, and the APA was able to verify the numerous awards that Housea Levine claimed to possess, and in fact, that was confirmed by the APA. So we're very pleased with the results. And Ron, I couldn't remember, I think we forwarded copies of the reference checks to you, and I don't know whether I CC'd the village board as a whole. I should have. If I did not, I apologize for that.
I don't recall.
No,
I didn't get one.
no.
Okay, I will see to that before I go home tonight.
Comments from the board?
I have a comment. I just want to make sure our residents understand that we'd been talking about this, and we actually have in the budget about half the money because we've been preparing for this study, and I'm presuming they have worked in the other half in our new budget coming up. So this is something that has been planned. Staff did a good job zeroing in on approximately what it would cost, and they seem to be pretty much right on the button. So I just want our residents to know that, we have been planning and we have been putting the money away to do this comprehensive study.
And then also point out, trustee, you just kind of reminded of us one other thing. We talk about how the average duration of comprehensive plans is in the 10 to 15 year range, and since our 1998 plan is now 11 or 12 years old, it might be time. I think we also learned another important factor from the Housea Levine folks during their presentation. I believe they referenced the fact that in another community they had just completed a rewrite of a comprehensive plan for the village of Kenilworth that was going on 100 years of age. So perhaps we're not as tardy as we think compared to some of the other communities that are out there in the Chicagoland area.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just want to mention, for the people at home, this is not only a study. This isn't expending money for a study. This is expending money for the real deal, a new rewrite and a new plan, not a rewrite. It's a new
rewrite.
plan. Well, it's a new plan.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of elements we had talked about when we had the 3 presentations. Everybody stayed and we hashed out a lot of things so that, in a setting like this, we would not have to rehash it. And I just want to say that one of the things that I hope we're all committed to as a board is that we keep an open mind. When John Househill said that he would make recommendations for the uses of certain property, that we don't dig in our heels and say we want this, even if he, with all his experience and his company's experience says, that's destined for failure versus something we may not have thought of or whatever. So I would like the contract and the negotiations with them in coming up with the scope of the contract, that it not say, we want you to come up with XYZ. We are part of a great deal of their appeal was their ability to guide us and advise us, and then we have the ultimate say in that. So I would like that to be as open-ended as possible. We know what the scope is, but it's not towards a concrete goal for any certain part of town, that it's, give us your best shot and we'll go from there.
Well, I think after his comment is that he wouldn't
Yeah.
go along with, just because we wanted one thing maybe or thought about it, he would sit there and tell you, no, that's not the best use for it. And it's
That
his
wouldn't
name
stop
that's on
us.
that company. So if he just followed whatever the trustees of the board decided to do and it wasn't in the best interest, then he looks like, he's got egg on his face, because that whole development that he helped, with the comprehensive and all that would go down. So I would sit there and say that it's an excellent idea, but I think the company that we're hopefully looking at
Yeah.
will,
Because there's a
Stand up.
divergence in ideas as to what we'd like to see with certain pieces of property. But I think we've all agreed to keep an open mind and see what the experts say would work.
And this is going to they'll be pulling the community. There'll be a time for the community involvement, and they're pretty good at trying to get the community involved from what we understand. And it's going to take a long time to do this. What was it, like 18 months or something?
Well,
It's-
actually, I thought he said with his crew, he said he may accomplish it in 12 months, outside 18 months.
Well, between 12 to 18, but yeah, but he tries to get the community involved. And I think that's really important for the people to know and to keep watching on our websites and stuff. So when it's time, they can come and have their input and their visions, what they're looking for in Westmont.
I don't think it's not only important, it's imperative that we have their input.
So, John, is the motion for Monday among the 3, or a motion that we seem to have a consensus reached as to yay or nay on Househill and Levine?
I was hoping tonight you would reach a consensus, so the motion would be, would list them. It would be selecting them and authorizing staff to negotiate a contract.
Do a straw poll?
Can?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Your Honor also mentioned, for Trustee Klebenau's benefit, I think she made a very compelling point the other time about the importance of those do-it-yourself workshops, and perhaps if so authorized by a vote on Monday evening, we can kind of try to twist the consultant's arm to include those at no extra cost in the finished product.
I'd like it, because he got me all excited over the do-it-yourself
Yeah.
stuff, and then I find out that's an extra.
That's your job, Fred.
Yeah, work on that.
So,
Yeah.
We'll go around and everybody give their opinion.
Of the 3, Househill.
I still believe House Hill. From the beginning, I did.
Lee?
Halcyon.
I'm going to say all 3 of them were excellent, so it was a hard decision, but I do like Househill.
Let's make it unanimous then.
Yep.
So I got your information for you, sir? I think that's it. Tax increment financing, TIF district consultant selection. Board to consider the selection of a consultant for the purpose of establishing a TIF district in the South Westmont Business District. Mr. Kimball.
Likewise, Your Honor, the village board instructed staff to promulgate RFPs for the possibility of establishing a TIF district for consulting services in and around the area generally considered the South Westmont Business District. And accordingly, at a special Committee of the Whole meeting of the Westmont Village Board, I believe on February 10th, we did hear the presentations of the 3 finalist candidates. That was Teska and Associates, Ehlers, and SB Friedman and Associates. And again, not wishing to assume anything, it appeared to be the consensus direction of the village board at discussion following those 3 presentations that the firm of Teska and Associates, you were kind of leaning in that direction, although you have not made a formal vote in that regard. We likewise would be considered a privilege if the board so instructed us to negotiate a contract for services with the selected consultant. We would be happy to proceed accordingly.
Trustee comments?
I'm sorry. I have the one thing that just concerns me on this TIF at this time is we have not budgeted for it. And I was wondering if we could subject it till we have a budget next, this coming May and know where it fits in. Because I feel very uncomfortable. If anybody in any department came in and wanted to use something even close to this amount of money, you would sit there and say, well, it's not budgeted, you have to work till next year to get it in the budget. I'm a little concerned it's not in the budget, it's not a budgeted item as of yet. And if we could possibly subject it, if they would be willing to subject it to our, and we got to get a comprehensive plan started. They work with it. I'd like it to just say it's subject to them being put into the budget in May so that we can feel comfortable. We know it's in the budget. We know we've seen the budget. I haven't seen anything on the budget, so I'm kind of very leery of doing this at this time unless we do it.
We're so close to the new budget. I mean, that's a very easy thing to program into the budget. I mean, subject to
Well, until we
sure.
sit down and have our meetings and stuff, I just feel like I'm putting the cart before the horse. I feel it's a disservice to our residents to say, we're doing this when we haven't seen anything on the budget. We don't know for sure what's happening with the budget. And I don't think they would have any problem, having it, that the contingency would be, probably we'll be ready in May to vote on our budget. And I'm sure by then, that it's like buying property. You just have a contingency that it did get approved in the budget. The funding has been there.
Anyone else?
Well, I'd certainly hope that because we really need to develop that property and it's not going to be an overnight thing, that it was on our list of priorities. So I hope it's in the budget.
Well,
It is in the draft budget. Yes.
This is another one that I'm gonna flat out say, we can't not afford to do this. We can't not afford to do this. We have sat and looked at properties in this town, vacant, gone down, nothing's been done, and I mean, everyone here all knows that I also was a proponent to take this thing and put it right in the central business district too. Because the way it sits right now, you need it there too. As far as the amount of money putting into the budget, I think it's.
We've
it's-
operated from the assumption that this was something the board
Right.
wanted. It will be in the budget.
Right.
And
Right.
that's how we've been preparing the
I mean, you
budget.
have to look at it as a $30,000 investment in the future of this community.
Right.
And I think Lee makes an excellent point. We have to move on it sooner rather than later. Ron's already said it's in the draft budget, so he must have, been able to find the money to put it in there some way. I'd like to move forward with it as soon as we can, and I still firmly believe that Teska is the consultant that we should select.
I just feel that we as a board owe this to the residents of this town to do the best we can to increase somehow the traffic and possible tax revenue that may come off of that property. Hopefully, it'll be a fair amount. You're rolling dice, yeah, the economy's not in very good shape, but it's something that I feel very strong about is being elected as an official in this town. We have a lot of things that we have to decide. We've made some tough decisions. There are going to be some people who come after us and say, oh, what'd you do that for? You know, you could have spent it over here, you could have spent it over there. Well, what everybody needs to understand is this is an investment in the future, not next year, not the second year, not 5 years. We're talking 10 years down the road. A lot of us, I'm sure, sitting on this board right now, are not going to be here when this goes into, when it finally ends.
23 years.
23
for a
years.
TIF, I hope not.
I mean, I'd like to be standing and be able to say, hey, it's done, you know? But all I'm saying is it's an investment in the future. And I just feel doing this also, I think, is going to draw some people into this town. And that's why I was looking at several other areas too. I mean, you have to do something to draw families back into a town. I think one of the biggest things is that we're losing some of that. I mean, I don't know what the registration or the enrollment is at the high school or the junior high. I don't know which way it's tailing. I mean, I don't know. But I think a lot of these things have a direct correlation on those types of things.
How many times have we heard from residents that how come we don't bring more businesses, which we personally can't do that, but that's the comment is,
Right.
How come we're not doing more? This is exactly how this is done.
And the reason it's done this way is because you don't piecemeal it. You overlay an area. It is developed as a large parcel.
Well,
And
and
you're not having to deal, as a village, having to deal one-on-one with this landlord or this landlord or that landlord. You're dealing with,
And this will give us much-needed leverage, as all of our surrounding communities already have,
Yep.
to offer some incentives. I was talking to a business owner in Downers Grove, and I said, why? You know, we would love to have you in Westmont. And he said, the incentives here were just phenomenal. Well, we know why.
right.
And we're not in a position to do that today, and we need to move on this. I think we need to move quickly.
But it's going to take all those years, and all I'm asking is to add a little clause in the contract or whatever you do, or.
Well, keep in mind,
hold
we're
off.
not approving the contract. You're just
Well,
doing.
We're just
I know.
we're just
contract will
approving
come
who's
back
going to
to
do
you.
it.
But how long would it take for it to go effect? All I'm asking is that we make sure we do this when we've seen a budget, when we know what's gone in the budget.
Is that for the comprehensive plan too?
Pardon me? The comprehensive plan, we at least started budgeting last year, so I know that's in there. We budgeted half of it last year, and the other half is coming this year's budget.
But
We
that's
didn't plan
the-
for the TIF.
But that's the same thing then.
No.
They're two separate pricing. We've got a plan for the TIF, and I
Well-
think it's wrong to put to vote on something when we haven't even approved or seen the budget to see, look how long we work on the budget. How many times we get a list saying,
but it's-
this
I
has to be
agree,
taken off.
But
this
I
has to be-"
definitely have the confidence in Ron that if it's in the draft budget, he has found a
confidence.
way to make it fit.
Yeah.
So that's good enough for me. I mean, we'll see the budget, and maybe we'll say, okay, we need to come up with.
By the time we expend something, we're going to be in the new budget year. And again, I'll just say again, we
Yeah.
understood this is a high priority of the board to have it in the budget, and it will be reflected in the budget.
On the budget? What are we looking at?
well, we-
Timeframe? We
To
got the
start
draft-
talking
We got
about-
the draft budget.
We got the draft budget, we've been working with the department heads, and we're going to be setting up the workshop soon for the board as we get towards the end of March here.
Well, and I think, Ron, isn't the reason you put it in the draft budget is because the board said this has got to be there?
We understood it was the highest priority.
Yeah.
In the sense that.
I mean, that's how we
So it's
made
going to
it.
be in the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
I
And
imagine
when will
it's-
we have to pay it?
I don't think we're going to expend any funds probably until after May 1st. I mean,
That-
by the
that's the
time we
other
come back
question.
with a contract, that's got to be.
That's what I was going to get to. It's going to take at least a couple of weeks to negotiate a contract, get it in final form, and then get it in front of you. At that point, you'll be further along in the budget process.
Okay.
If there's a red flag, you'll still have the right to say, you know what, let's
Okay, that's
put an
all I want to make
implementation
sure.
date after the budget's effective. That's fine, but I think at the very least, it would be nice for staff to start negotiating the contract, get it in final form, and present it to you. Your argument then can be, raised again. It may have some validity if there's budget problems.
We can.
Well, and to Pat's point, we can always pull back at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, as long as we have time to pull back at some point before, because from now until May, there still could be gosh knows what emergencies. And being that this is going to take so long, and it's got to work with our comprehensive plan that won't even start till then, I just don't see the major rush. We know we're going to do it. We just want to see the funds are there so we can tell our residents the funds are there. I feel very confident with it. I didn't last year feel confident with the comprehensive, but now that we budgeted half and we know it's in the works for this year budgeting because we planned it, I feel confident enough in the comprehensive. I'll feel good with the TIF once I know. I also had a question on the TIF, and it may not have anything to do, but I noticed it in, I think it was in Chicago, it was on the news. And I tried to call you and I didn't get you in. What happens, and this would be a legal question for John, I guess, what happens in that area should we have a store that's been on a TIF and it closes? And I don't understand what, but there's something in Chicago, and I can't remember what, Borders Books is closing, and there was a big question brought up about, well, what happens because this was brought in with the TIF?
Well, nothing with the underlying TIF, but oftentimes you can have development agreements with a developer. You could have sales tax incentive agreements, and you can build in provisions with sales tax incentive rebates, et cetera, if the store goes dark. Same with the development agreement. If there are certain infrastructure costs fronted by a municipality, you can try and get some of those back.
Okay. Yeah, because I never even thought about it until it came up there, and
It's become a more popular discussion as big boxes started, they were all the rage for a while, then they started going dark. Some of the big boxes were hanging on to their properties and not simply because they didn't want a competitor to come in and it was hurting the municipalities. So municipalities been more aggressive with protections in development agreements.
okay, so there's a way of protecting it if something like that happens. Because I know there was an article that we had received probably almost a year ago that I held on to about the TIF, that I had something to do with the CPI, and because it hangs on the property tax, they didn't want it to your TIF to be, I guess, attached to a CPI or something. I kept the article, and it just said that the CPI was not the ideal indicator to use as property values all over the state are experiencing various declines and readjustments. And I was trying to go back and think, and I was trying to replay the TIF thing, and I don't remember anybody dwelling on that particular thing, and I couldn't remember what the TIF was, but it's something I suppose we'll be learning as they're coming in and doing the TIF.
I was going to say, great question for the consultant.
Yeah, and trustee, that's one of the questions that we had in our reference checks. Do you have any advice to us as this is our first TIF? And a couple of the communities that we checked with said that it's important to contact the DuPage County assessor at an early opportunity, because if EAVs are at a time when they're falling, or you're close to the next EAV, which is likely to go down, you want to time the inception of your TIF with that downturn. You don't want to do it and then have the EAVs go down, 3 weeks after you've established your TIF. You would want to establish your TIF after the EAVs have been declared by the township assessor to be somewhat lower, so that your basis is a little bit lower and the increment would be higher in the future.
So it's good that if we start now with everything being at a low pace, then is what
Well, again, as John pointed out, I think we're going to work closely with our consultant to try to time this right with the market. That's a very important consideration as we embark upon the establishment of the TIF.
And I think Friedman actually alluded to that during their presentation. They talked about that.
I was trying to, see, I went through the first Teska because that was the one, I was concerned with, and I didn't have time to go through Friedman, and I was trying to remember why it sounded familiar, but I couldn't find it in there.
Well, why don't we do a straw poll again,
Sounds good.
starting at your end?
Teska.
Teska.
Teska?
Jessica?
And I like Teska. I like being different, keeping them different,
Yeah.
comprehensive, and
Make it unanimous again.
Thank you.
Okay,
Works.
thank you. New business. Zoning request, 55 East 63rd Street. Board to consider the following request for the Cultural Center of Taipei Economic Cultural Office, TICO, in Chicago. A, map amendment request to rezone from OR1 Office Research District to C1 Commercial Business District. B, special use permit request to operate a general and professional office with accessory research. C, site and landscape plan approval for an addition to serve the cultural center. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Daniel. I'm the attorney for the applicant, 136 West Vallette Street, Suite 3 in Elmhurst, 60126. With me is the architect Sean Chen, and he has a PowerPoint that he's going to distribute to each of you in 8.5 by 11 format so you can page through it. And then on the display here, he'll try to help me work through that a little bit. With me today are some of the individuals that testified at the zoning hearing. Forrest Chen is the director of TICO. The Culture Center's planner is Joe Abel, who's almost directly behind me. And then in the row behind Joe is Louie Abuna, who did the traffic consulting work from KLOA. The A is for Abuna out of Rosemont. So between all of us, we've provided enough information to the Economic Development Committee. We had a unanimous recommendation there. The Zoning and Planning Commission provided another unanimous recommendation on all three of the requests, and I'm going to try to summarize that for you. On the zoning, it falls into a bit of a no-brainer category. You have a rather different OR1 parcel at the location currently. It's unlike what you have on the north side of town along Cass, on the west side of Cass Avenue. It's not similar to any of the other OR1 parcels. It fits within the C1 jurisdiction. It makes sense in that area around the Cass and 63rd Street corridors to have the C1 extend out a bit further. From a planning and economic development standpoint, the C1 makes sense for the property. You essentially have two bookends with the new indoor soccer center on the west side of Cass, down 63rd Street, and a cultural center use at the property that it's proposed for to create traffic generation for that area. Hopefully there will be some synergy with those two uses that improves your economic generation down in that South Westmont Business District area. The proposal at this point in time is to take the existing building and convert it. As you can see on the first slide here, page 1, the intent is to leave the building substantially as it appears. The highest point of the building will remain as it is where the current main entrance is. The plan is, according to the site plan, which is page 2 of what we've handed out, to provide slightly in excess of what's necessary for the parking. You can see the parking fields are substantially in the same area. The landscape islands are where you would expect them to be. There's some darker tone to some of the drive aisle areas and the parking spaces. Those are to indicate disturbed areas. That's where there'll be some new parking, some rehabilitation of the parking area. And in the back there, for the back roughly 1/3 of the building, the plan is to partially demolish the structure that's there. That's where an existing garage is, and to construct a theater area, an auditorium area for the Culture Center use. All right, the Culture Center's been around for quite a while, more than 20 years in Westmont. And one of the things about the fabric of your community is that you've got some diversity, and the Chinese American culture, Taiwanese American culture in Westmont has been a strong part of your fabric for some time. The Culture Center has been existing along Pasquinelli Drive, just north of Ogden Avenue. They haven't had problems over the years with any of the neighbors, be they office users or residential users to the west, and they expect that to continue. They met with the neighbors to develop aspects of their site plan. There were discussions of landscaping. At a meeting, there were discussions of how to handle the detention. The detention is planned to be designed according to best management practices. It's not going to be a wet basin. It'll be a dry basin with the plantings that you would expect to see in that detention pond. You can see some of that on page 3 of the PowerPoint. Page 3 of the PowerPoint is the site landscaping plan. It preserves substantial amounts of the existing landscaping. In that landscaping plan, you can see they're also preserving the sign that's in existence. There's a monument sign there, and we are looking at a site that is intended to remain substantially as it appears today. The brickwork, as you page through this, is designed to fall in line so that the masonry where the auditorium portion of the building drops off will be about equivalent, on par with the existing portion of the building today. With respect to the next page, the building exterior perspectives, you'll see that the intent is to match the brickwork. Those next 2 pages in the 3 pages in the brochure, the last 3 pages show you that they're trying to match the brickwork again You can see there's a slight curve to the southern face of the auditorium. As far as the use is concerned, I know many of you are familiar with the Culture Center. Some of you heard the EDC presentation. The way that the Culture Center operates is that it operates to generate synergy for the Taiwanese culture, first of all. They also have some economic responsibilities. They are actually a foreign mission, so it's treated similarly to an embassy or a consulate. So you will have a permanent location that they can call home in Westmont for the long term, which for a community like Westmont is a terrific benefit, and it's, of course, a strong benefit to the Culture Center. They intend to move forward immediately. Closing on the property, if we have the benefit of your good graces on Monday, is intended to occur possibly within the same week. So they are moving forward as quickly as possible. There are a handful of conditions that were discussed at the zoning hearing. It's not as if you're going to have an institution that comes here and rents out space. This is not what they do. They're prohibited from renting things out. Mr. Zemanek has inserted some provisions related to that. There are some provisions related to signage that came up mostly because of my concern and my experience with the history of temporary signage that you would see in the conditions. Very briefly, there was a suggestion of an 11 p.m. limitation on the hours of operation on Friday and Saturday. In talking with my client just a few minutes ago, several of their events have gone to midnight. And we would ask that the weekend late hour terminate activities at midnight. The weekday, Sunday through Thursday time periods were just fine. Otherwise, it looks like everything in the way of the conditions has been adequately planned out. We'll work with staff and the village attorney on that side of things. Our professionals are certainly here if you have any questions about the project. It is, in essence, an office use during the day. They rely on volunteers. They have library and audiovisual center. They have some display areas. They have cultural events on a handful of occasions during the year. The proposed ordinance notes that they would have approximately 12 different events for which they could have signage. That is about on par with what their larger events have been, about once every 4 to 6 weeks. During the year it fluctuates. For example, you had 2 larger ones between December and mid-January rather than what might be the ordinary one. I believe that's about as quick a recitation of everything that I've made in some time. It was a breath of fresh air being before your Planning and Zoning Commission. They do an extremely good job, and I think the issues were thoroughly vetted there, but our experts are here if you have questions for them.
Comments from anyone?
Just a quick question. On the signage for the events, you had said, I know before economic development, that it was going to be banner type, like by the monument sign, or are you looking for a different kind of signage?
It would essentially be post to post with a banner that would be reusable or recyclable with your print letters like what you would see for Westmont, Taste of Westmont or a Kiwanis event or something like that.
Okay. Is there any interest in an electronic message board
No.
at this time?
No.
Okay.
And actually, the signage request is literally my concern. Nobody from TICO had an issue with it until I described the process that they had to go through on the administrative side for those temporary signs at the village, understanding that these events, if they go well, bring traffic into the district, it made sense to have those temporary signs there so people know what's going on.
Good.
And just for the board's benefit, the conditions that Mr. Daniel referenced are in the special use ordinance. Typical special conditions that we impose on a use where warranted. You haven't had the benefit before tonight to review those, but essentially they address temporary signage. Because this is a not-for-profit and the zoning ordinance does require a minimum fee, and they may have several of these. This waives the minimum fee for a temporary sign permit, but they do have to come in and submit a sign permit application. We have the hours of operation, which is 10 p.m. Sundays through Thursday. Again, just a suggestion by me, not anything we did not specifically discuss hours. Also, the 11 o'clock p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, I just made that up.
Well, obviously don't like it.
Yeah, and they want to change to midnight, so.
And there were some questions from neighbors about that I think Mr. Zemanek latched on to. So it's fair to ask for something that terminates on a time certain unless it's a special event, and that would have to go back for review.
The applicant indicated there are no plans to rent the property and that they would not be doing so. This is a special use permit unique to this applicant, and because it does have an auditorium aspect to it, there's a prohibition on the renting of this facility to others, at least without the advance approval of the village corporate authorities. The reason is with an auditorium, you don't want rock bands going in there or other large groups on a regular basis. That's not part of the cultural center. There's a provision regarding overflow parking if there is a large-scale event that they anticipate where they would have to secure parking on additional property. And then some provisions where if we have multiple violations of these conditions, you actually could revoke the special use.
Any other comments?
I don't have a problem with the midnight on the weekend. No.
I don't either, that's fine.
Not in the least. I mean, you've
Not at all.
you've got some situations, I mean, some of the establishments down there operate till 1, shall we say, that back up against residential areas. So,
Yeah, I think it's
no,
fine.
I got no problem with that. Can't
What
imagine
price
what
would
that
that
is.
be?
But, no, I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I mean, I think it's an absolute plus for this village to have that, especially going into that particular area. That's going to just bolster what we're trying to do. And we've been looking for things that are going to help anchor, and I think this will be a great addition to this section of town. Looking forward to it.
Any other comments?
Okay with it.
I think it's great.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much.
We should check if there's anybody here from the public. Have any comments? Okay. Being
Thank
none,
you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Monday.
Thank you for staying in Westmont, and we look forward to attending some of your events.
Yes.
Okay. Next will be number 5, a variance request. 6300 South Cass Avenue. Board to consider the following request from BP. A, zoning code variance request to increase the number of allowable signs. B, zoning code variance request to increase the maximum gross square footage of signage. Thank
Good
you.
evening. My name is John Streets. I'm with Doyle Signs. I'm here on behalf of the BP station, also known as Cass Gas Food, Inc. With me tonight is Almas Khan, the manager of the facility, in case anything comes up that he needs to address. At the core of this request, we are seeking to work within the boundaries of the existing signs at the site and simply retrofit one of the signs with a more efficient lighting system and face to advertise their gas price with and without a car wash. There are no additional signs being proposed or added to the site, and at this time, none of the other signs are going to be modified. Our request complies with the EMB provisions of your sign code. In addition, the pylon sign itself that we're looking to modify satisfies the size, height, and setback of your sign code. Ultimately, the existing signs at the site don't fall under the requirements of your sign code, your current sign code, because of the quantity and overall area. However, each of these signs are necessary to identify the business to both east-west traffic on 63rd and also north-south traffic on Cass. In addition, a permit was issued for signs in 2008 for everything except for the 2 pole-mounted signs that advertise a discount on gas with car wash. I believe that without proper identification for this site cannot yield a reasonable return, and thus each sign is required. Each sign fits well within the architecture of the building and serves a purpose to identify the site and its services to the public. I believe this location is unique in that it has 3 functions, each which require identification. It has gas, or it sells gas, it's a convenience store, and it offers a car wash. Each of the existing signs at the site accommodate one portion of their business, and thus they're needed. In addition, at the site, there are several trees that limit visibility of the site along Cass and 63rd. So reducing the number of signs would really limit the site with those visibility concerns. This variance will not alter the character of the site as it's been operating with these signs in the current quantity and area since 2008, and likely before. To reduce the number of signs to 2, or to reduce it to the allowed square footage of about 88 square feet, 88.4 square feet, would prevent this business from communicating their business to the public, and they wouldn't be able to have a reasonable return for the business. In addition, I'd like to note that staff made comments about removing those two illegal pole-mounted signs as part of the requested conditions. We are in agreement with removing those signs as a requirement to, if this variance is approved, for replacing the pylon sign. With that said, I believe I've gone over everything. If anyone has any questions or concerns, I'd like to answer those now.
Staff, have any comments?
Yeah.
Nothing in particular. We do appreciate the applicant's desire to work with us to at least eliminate the two illegal signs to bring it a little bit closer in conformity. The board would remember a couple of years ago, the Speedway gas station down the street doing a very similar retrofit of their pylon sign to have the electronic reader for the prices. So you're familiar with this type of request, and we don't have any further issues with it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
One of the hardships, I believe, that was mentioned at Planning and Zoning was the signage is based on the linear footage of the building, and this is a very small building where they have their convenience store compared to a large canopy that doesn't count, so it kind of limits the square footage of signage otherwise.
We were just going to ask one question from the staff level, Your Honor, and that is, if this electronic sign is permitted, how much will the price of gas go down at this location?
They can adjust it faster.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I was flipping through and it says 304, and I was wondering if they can keep that for a while.
I wondered if that was,
Well, that's an old picture.
And today, that was last week.
I don't
That's
have
not
a
going to have any
problem.
bearing on the getting the sign permit.
I don't have a problem with it, only because there was just something on the news the other, I think it was even yesterday, where there was some going out testing with a 5-gallon thing to make sure pumps are pumping it. I think it was again in Chicago, but they were pumping out to see that there was definitely, it was if you got 5 gallons or not. But there was also some kind of regulation that said the sign out front had to be on the sign on the pump, and a lot of times, I don't know how often those pumps change, but they change probably once or twice, maybe even during a day, which makes it difficult for staff to go running out there changing things if you have to do it manually too. So I think it's a lot easier to be inside and do a little programming.
I concur 100%, yeah.
I thought you would. So,
No
of course,
other-
it would help a little lessen gas too.
No other comments?
And the wind.
Anybody from the public? Any comments?
sounds
Thank you very much, and
reasonable.
they'll be on the agenda for Monday.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 6, another variance request, 1 East Oak Hill Drive. Board to consider a zoning code variance request from T-Mobile to permit more than 3 antennas on a structure. Anyone here from T-Mobile?
Good evening, Keith Nyman, SureSight Consulting Group on behalf of T-Mobile. I am seeking a variance request as we are exceeding the 3 antennas that are allowed per building. T-Mobile is requesting 6 antennas. That'll be located on the upper tier of the rooftop. There's 2 tiers, and there'll be 3 sectors with 2 antennas per sector on the rooftop. So,
Does staff have any comment on it?
Again, would just be happy to answer any questions you may have. I missed the first part of the presentation, I apologize. There are 3 sled mounts with 2 antennas each, so they're requesting a total of 6.
Okay.
This is getting more and more common.
Comment, isn't it? Yeah. Comments from any trustees?
I think we'll actually take a look at it when there's about 4,000 sitting up there, and we'll ask ourselves, how did this happen?
Take a field trip and go look at them, huh? Any comments from the public? If not, then thank you for coming in, and we'll have this on the agenda for Monday.
thank you.
Thank you. Number 7, Variance request, 213 South Grant Street. Board to consider the following request from Pedro and Angela Rodriguez. A, zoning code variance request to permit the construction of an addition which will encroach into the required front yard setback. And B, zoning code variance request to permit the coverage greater than 35% maximum allowed in the R3 single-family detached resident district.
Hello, my name is Scott Zerkes, the architect working with the client, and Pete Rodriguez is also here, the client for the job. The project, basically the variances pertain to a existing home that the owners are looking to do some heavy remodel and small addition to the rear of it. The variances come into play with the renovation of the front porch. Currently, the front porch only spans probably about 2/3 of the front elevation of the house. With increasing the curb appeal of the house and with the renovations proposed, this would maintain the existing front yard setback. It wouldn't encroach any further than the existing does, but it is in the within the front yard requirements as they stand today. The rear addition to the project is a small, modest 10 by 16, I think, foot addition that would provide space to their growing family, growing children. The project as a whole would be at that 39%. Right now, it currently stands at 37% lot coverage. One of their issues that they have on trying to get down to that 35, which is currently existing, is the detached garage, which sits at the back of the lot off the alley. Obviously, the drive off of Grant Street takes up quite a bit of that lot coverage. And it's a current condition that they purchased with the house 10 years ago when they moved in. So,
any comments or questions?
I think this is a perfect example of when we made it a 35% maximum allowance, that we would have wiggle room to keep it within good boundaries. So I don't have any problem with their request, including the patio, which takes it to 39. And I don't have any problem because I went by there, and because it isn't going to encroach any further, because it's pretty close to the sidewalk now, but as long as it's going actually laterally and not closer to the sidewalk, I don't have a problem with that either.
Yeah, we're actually using the 2 piers that are existing right now and just adding a 3rd pier, so it's going to be right in line with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a perfect example to come in front of the board right now, because this is doing exactly what we wanted to be done. We're looking at these things as they come along, because there are builders out there that are going to tear down and try to put something else up on a lot. In a case like this, it's remodeling. It's expanding the home on an existing footprint. You're not tearing it down. You're making improvements to the property, increasing the value. That was the whole purpose. And I think people got a total misunderstanding of why we dropped this back to 35%. But
Especially since it was never
I
fully.
think, I have no problem with this because of the application and the way it's being put into play. So, no, I have no problem with it. I think it's great.
No.
And the fact that it's next to a park, too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, thank you for coming in, and we'll have it on the agenda for Monday.
Thank you.
Okay, number 8, Norcom license agreement. Board to consider extending an exclusive license agreement for municipal alarm service with Norcom, Public Safety Communications, Inc.
As the board's been aware from prior discussions, the agreement that we had with Norcom expired a year ago, and they had a renewal clause, so we've just been renewing an old agreement. In conjunction with this, we're combining our dispatch center with Downers Grove, and the movement of equipment and the purchasing of additional equipment now requires a rewriting of the current contract. The contract has gone back and forth, and it's still a work in progress. but the major holdup that needs to be resolved is the option for the pricing of the radio transmitters. And we need a board decision on that so we can proceed with the final version of the contract.
Option 2.
Option 2.
Staff's recommendation.
That's option 2. Yeah, we looked, if anyone at home was following what happened at the public safety meeting, we had a split between option 2 and option 3, which is the village's share of certain funds collected. And option 2, the village takes less money at the front 3 years of a 6-year contract, but gets more money at the end of the 6 years. Option 3, we don't drop our current revenue for 3 years, and we lose an estimated $60,000 at the end of 3 years. So having revisited it, several of us changed our thought process that option 2, which was staff's recommendation, and we take a little less at the front end to get more at the back, we're okay with that.
I agree. Everybody else?
Option 2.
Just wanted to point out that there was a survey done by the fire department showing in the area the direct connect fees. Currently, we're in the lower half, and by the time that the subscribers will see an increase, we anticipate we'll still be in at least the middle of that.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, wanted to show that. Okay.
Just so you know, you have a red line version, which is only sent off to NORCOM today. So hopefully we'll get comments back and get any changes that are negotiated to you before Monday. If not, we'll have to table this. So I apologize for delays from staff and particularly my end in getting it finalized and sent off to NORCOM now under a tight time limit. But hopefully we can do our best to get it wrapped up.
Dick, is this enough direction from the board for you?
Yeah, not a problem, and our council has...
Come up to the podium, please.
It's not a problem. Our council has had the opportunity to review the changes suggested, and it's something we do all the time anyhow. So it's not going to be a problem. We can get it turned around that fast.
Thank you very much. Number 9, 2011 zoning map. Board to consider approval of the revised official zoning map of the village.
Thank you. The color version was printed out and distributed around the dais this evening, so you should each have a copy of that. As you know, the board is statutorily required to adopt a revised map on an annual basis when there are changes. I'm excited to say there were changes this year. It's been, last year I don't think we had any, so there were a few annexations and consolidations that are reflected on the revised map. Do you have any questions about it?
Yes, I do. We had talked at one point about a particular area changing the zoning. I haven't heard any more discussion about that, and I'd kind of like to know where we are with that.
Which area is that?
The area in the area that on Warwick that has a tendency to gain a lot of water.
Northeast Acres.
Northeast Acres.
We're certainly at the direction of the village board in that regard, trustee. If you do have a specific request that you'd like to instruct us to bring forth, we would do that at the earliest opportunity. I know that we had discussed that. We kind of were waiting the results of the village-wide stormwater analysis, and that can be accomplished, and we would be happy to take your direction in that regard.
Perhaps the next committee meeting?
Maybe put it on the next.
We are going to be meeting on the 21st is building and zoning, and I think that might be the appropriate place to...
That's good.
Because my other question is, do we by statute have to approve the zoning map every year?
Every year, you have to do it by March 31st for changes, rezonings that have occurred by December 31st of the previous year. Of course, any rezoning has to go through planning and zoning. It's going to be a process and won't be reflected until next year's map regardless.
Okay. Because in conjunction, obviously, with our comprehensive plan, there may be a few changes there too.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right.
There is one additional change that I didn't mention. It should be highlighted on there. Kim's magic with the programming, she was able to add the boundary lines of the moratorium area so that with quick reference at a glance, we can just tell which properties are within that.
Good.
That was one of the little sections that
Yeah.
I was looking at.
That's the purple hash marks?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the ordinance number is cited on a legend to the lower right.
Good.
Chairman, if I could, I'd like to pay particular tribute to Village Planner Malik, or excuse me, I'm sorry, not Village Planner, Village Planning Engineer Nickel, with the able assistance of the Assistant Director Malik in compiling this map. I think it's a good work, and as we mentioned a couple of years ago, their decision to add color to the map gives you a little bit of an extra level of information here, because now our zoning map starts to take on some of the flavor of a land use map at the same time. So it gives a good snapshot of what the community looks like and the predominance of land use in particular zoned areas.
Well, we appreciate all their good work, and we're fortunate to have such good employees. Thank you. 10, Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement. Board to consider approving the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement with DuPage County.
Thank you. With the dissolution of the Westmont Surface Water Protection District, the responsibilities of that district were conveyed between the village of Westmont, the village of Downers Grove, and in the unincorporated areas, DuPage County. At this time, DuPage County is seeking the village's support in their efforts to obtain a CDBG, Disaster Recovery and Public Infrastructure Program funds, to move along with stormwater improvements that they're doing up there, in particularly properties in and around the detention basins and things like that too. So I spoke with DuPage County since I wrote this agenda item, and I'm not sure why it's called an agreement. There is no responsibility on our part. This is just our support. If we were writing it, I would have called it a resolution, but this is actually a boilerplate example of the language that was in the grant application. So this is just our support in their efforts, and we ask for your support.
And those get reviewed surprisingly very carefully, so use the language that they propose, I've found.
And that is what's attached, exactly what was given to us.
Comments by anyone?
Do the people up there, the homeowners and around those detentions know and have been notified what's going on?
Yeah, in fact, I was told by DuPage County that part of the grant requirements is that they are all approached, as part of the application process before the application's even considered. So I don't know if they're finished doing that or not, but they're certainly far along in that process. I don't have an indication as to, what the level of cooperation is, though. I could find that out, but it's all in unincorporated territory anyway, except one parcel.
Well, we have that one parcel that's ours. That's why I was concerned about if they had been notified.
I'll find out.
Okay. Thank you. Next, 11, approval of a contract change order. Board to consider approval of construction contract change order for the West Burlington Water Main Improvement Project in the amount of $339,779.25. Reduction in contract.
What's that word?
Reduction.
Reduction.
That's what I thought.
Such a nice word.
All construction contracts are awarded in their unit-based price, so there could be anywhere from 10 to a couple hundred different line items that actually go up and down, and you actually pay based on what's provided and as measured in the field, if you will. All change orders are handled administratively, and we take care of that. But when the amount of the change order, in addition or subtraction, exceeds certain thresholds, it requires your approval because it was a competitively awarded bid and an awarded contract from a competitive bid. The reduction is in $339,779.25. It is the only change order, and as I explained, it requires your formal attention.
Why such a big chunk of change reduction?
When we applied for the project is funded with stimulus grant monies distributed through the Illinois EPA. When we submitted the project plans for grant application, the plans and specifications were already complete, and we actually were got grant approval to do the construction, and after the contract was awarded, the EPA determined that they were not going to cover the cost of all of the street resurfacing that we had that was in conjunction with it. And that's why when you go down Burlington Avenue right now, you see we're only allowed to go to the center line, so we got half of it done. So there's a lot of little items that add into this too, but the bulk of this change is the reduction in the amount of resurfacing on Burlington Avenue that they would not cover.
Okay. That works.
Okay. Thank you very much. This will be on the agenda for Monday.
Thank you.
Miscellaneous, number 12, finance ordinance, number 21.
Waive the reading.
Purchase orders. Any comments or questions on purchase orders?
Nope.
Nothing else to come before the board? We have a request for an executive session? For personnel. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved, Emery?
Second, Fleming.
All in favor?
Aye.
I should have done a roll.
That's okay.
Let's do a roll call. Roll call.
Trustee Emery?
Yes.
Trustee Forsley?
Yes.
Trustee Fleming?
Yes.
Trustee Klebanow?
Yes.
Trustee Seneca?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes. Thank you. We're adjourned to executive session.